Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. I mentioned that I went to Dice Tower East, but we didn't talk about the games that I played because I forgot most of the games that I played. I played a lot of forgettable games. Not necessarily, that's not true. Actually, most of these games are great. Just some of them aren't for me. And I'm going to skip Gutenberg and Brazil. I mean, Gutenberg I've played a bunch, so no big deal there. It's a great game. Brazil, played it once. Euro, 4X, more Euro than 4X. But those are both Portal titles, and I don't feel right. Like, go look at them and determine if they're right for you. But, the first game I played at Dice Tower East was Valetta or Valletta. I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. And that was a very interesting little game. We played it two-player, me and our friend Jonathan played it, and I had never heard of it before, never played it before, and I have very little recollection of how the game, like the main actions I took on my turn, but I remember I really enjoyed, basically there's a display of cards on two different sides of a street, and it's a little bit of an area, not necessarily area control, but like you want to kind of connect things together because it gives you discounts and such. It was a neat game. It was really neat. Didn't really remind me of much like it. I like when I play something that stands apart, and this definitely did. I enjoyed the game, but I more so just enjoyed spending time with Jonathan because I hadn't seen him since 20 whatever, I don't know when. The second game we played was a classic, Citadels. Played a game of Citadels with 8. This was the new, like, bigger box version that had little tiles for each character and had little reminder tokens for various player powers. We used to play Citadels a lot. I have the original, like, tall, narrow Silverline box, I think it was called. And I don't know that I ever really got any of the expansions. I think we just played base Citadels a whole lot. So this Citadels had a ton of characters I'd never seen before, a lot of special player powers, but also with 8, it's just way too many. Like, the pace of the game was just it was just crawling. But I still enjoyed it. It just took way too long. Yeah. We played Foundations of Rome. I went to get it from the library. Of course, it was checked out, but they had a shelf there that was like the sharing shelf, like put your games here and people could play them. And it was there. So I took it back to our room because Ignacy wanted to learn it. I got to play it with Ignacy, which is maybe the 5th game I've played with him in the 8 years I've known him. And Foundations of Rome is a very clever design. It's a city, it's one of those games where you're putting buildings on a map and their score is based on what they're next to. There's a ton of games like that. The difference is this one's like $200 and some dollars. It comes with these massive trays of these huge sun-dropped painted miniatures. And I enjoyed the game. I do not think the price of the game is justified. I mean, it is justified for what's there, but it's just this overblown production when all it really needed to be was cardboard tiles. If it was cardboard tiles and it was $60-$70, I would probably own it. But at the same time, I think I'd rather just play Era. I think that Era is a similar feeling game that includes dice and whatnot. And it wasn't just the price. It's just the size of the thing. The box is like this huge, like, how do you transport it? It doesn't go in a backpack. If I go on my motorcycle to game night, I can't transport that game to game night. It's just kind of a little bit over the top ridiculous. And so while I enjoyed the game, not for me. We also played Big City, which is a classic city builder. And, given the two, I think I'd rather just play Big City. And it itself is a fairly, huge, chunky miniatures kind of game. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then the last thing I think we played was First Rad, which I had never heard of. It's got an interesting little like snaking board moving, almost like a Chutes and Ladders moving mechanic, because there are some ways to to take shortcuts and whatnot. But your mice have to land on the same colored spaces. And as the game was being explained to me, I was completely lost. But as we played it, I figured out that all these resources that you collect tie into all these other ways of scoring points. And there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do to try to score points. And I came in dead last because I just didn't have a clue. I enjoyed it. Probably wouldn't play it again if somebody asked, but I thought it was a clever game. Just not for me. I played a prototype of a friend's game. He's been working on this game for years now and has gone through dozens of iterations. And I think that's it. I think that's all I played. The only thing I brought back was a copy of Ascension Eternal got given to me. It's a 2-player, just standalone, let's play Ascension 2-player. Em and I love Ascension. I kind of forgot that Ascension exists until a friend brought it over. It was mine. He's like, hey, this is yours. You can have it back. And we played it and really enjoyed ourselves. So I'm very excited to have just a little box version that I can play with Em, just 2-player, because that's the majority of the time that I play games is with her. So that was games I played at Dice Tower East, and I had a good time. If you want to know any more of my thoughts or details about any of those games, please let me know. We do, in fact, have a question from Chris today, and I did look at it. So here we go. Let me crank that volume, though.
Hey, friend, how are you? Good morning. So I'm going to ask you a question, but I know the answer to. But it's a 2-part question. Part 1, coffee or tea? Part 2, hot or cold? And why to both? Until next time.
Coffee or tea, hot and cold, or why to both? And why to both? The real answer is coffee. The true answer is both. I've been drinking coffee since I was a kid. My mom always drank half-calf Sanka instant coffee. My grandmother drank International Delight instant coffees. My grandmother also drank, I believe it was Folgers instant coffee. And so my grandmother would give me decaf coffee. I've just been drinking coffee my whole life. I've been drinking coffee my whole life to a problematic degree. Like pots a day. 20 cups a day, say. And been doing that since I was a teenager. I used to carry a thermos to school, and I knew the teachers that had coffee, and I would refill the thermos between classes, so I had coffee all day. At work, I drank just mountains of coffee, to the point that when I meet people that I haven't seen in years and years and years, that's one of the things they ask me, like, you still drink a couple pots of coffee a day? So apparently, it's just a part of my identity. That being said, I also have drank tea my whole life. I had a great aunt who was a very kind of New England tea and scones kind of lady. I've always enjoyed tea. My mom made sun tea, which is just a different way of brewing iced tea as a kid. Just put it outside and let it brew. So I drank a lot of cold tea as a kid, but I prefer both hot. Oh, and I meant to say, so a couple years ago I had a little bit of concern about kidney function. And my doctor asked me about coffee consumption, and he said, yeah, you should probably dial that back. So I started drinking less coffee, and now that we've been at home, I have a Keurig. I do now, but when we first started lockdown, I got rid of my coffee-making apparatus, and I purchased a pour-over thing, and I was making pour-over coffee. And my thought process there was, the more difficult I make it to make the coffee for myself, the less likely I am to drink it. And so now, for the last couple years, I've only drank 2 cups of coffee a day, and then I will have some tea throughout the day. Always hot. I don't really have a taste for sweet or for sweetness. Period. I don't really have a taste for iced tea anymore because it's not good cold. It's okay cold, but it's also not good unless it's sweetened to death, and I don't really enjoy sugar. Sugar makes me feel like crap. I'm not interested in it. So I always drink hot coffee and hot tea. The one exception would be Pabst's coffee beer. Love that. Really good, and it's cold. And generally I don't put anything in my coffee or tea, except for maybe a little bit of honey in my tea. And if I'm feeling extra fancy, some oat milk, make a latte for coffee. But generally, both of those just straight, black, I guess. Is black tea a thing? Black. But anyway. Just tea. A tea bag and hot water. That's all I need. There you are. What do you prefer? Coffee or tea? What do you put in it? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends, wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is moiety. It is a noun meaning a part, portion, or share. When I go out to dinner with my wife and kids, I don't order a meal for myself, as my dinner is a moiety from each of theirs. Moiety. M-O-I-E-T-Y. That's really strange. And also, this person just eats off of his wife and kids' plates. I thought that was in addition to getting a meal.